Hello and welcome to In Stitches. It's Bernina record 9:30 electronic day today. I've got 3 of these lovely machines here, all in various states. I have no idea what sort of condition they're in. I thought I would go through and assess each machine in turn and invite you along to look over my shoulder while I do so. It's going to be probably a fairly long video. I'll try and keep it reasonably brief though, if possible. Just take these machines as they are. I haven't cleaned them. It's as I've picked them up. I haven't done anything to them. Let's start by unpacking this one. Nice big cross here, a bit ominous. I'm not sure what we're going to find in here. Now they are fairly substantial cases, as you can see here. Just a couple of latches on the side to undo them. This one's actually starting to break down. It's quite a common issue. It's plastic casing, and here we have one of the machines. I can see a flatbed attachment there. I'll just get that machine out. We'll call this machine number 1 here. Foot controller, the flatbed, we'll leave that in there. Power cable, I guess we'll need a power cable for testing. And we'll just close that back up in the meantime. So just remember, yep, that's machine number 1. If I refer to these machines just by their numbers here. Ooh, yeah, they're not light, I can tell you that for sure. This one here looks like it's been sewn. That might have been one of my test pieces, I'm not 100% sure. But it needs a good clean up. But yep, let's just put that aside. So in the meantime, we'll call this one over the back machine number 2, and this one here can be machine number 3. Okay, now the idea of today's video is to just assess the machines, check them over, maybe give them a little bit of a clean up, see what we've got, what we don't have, and go from there. Ooh, that one's got the knee lifter, but no, oh yeah, it's got the flat bed. You can't see it, just out of shot there. Another power cable, it's actually got the manual. I will grab the flatbed and the manual out of here, and we'll just move this case off here. So that's number 3. Now I'll just put labels, little sellotape with labels on the top there so I can identify each one there, just the numbers up here. And yep, very dusty, so sorry about that, but we'll go through and clean them up. Right, there's the manual there, nice manual. Ring bound, I really like that. So that you can, you know, place the manual open flat on a flat surface there on the page you're on. Pretty handy. Very nice, clear instructions there. And nice sort of color-coded instructions. Pretty good. Very nice. Okay. So anyway, let's take a wee look here. It's looking pretty promising actually with this one. There's not a lot to go wrong with these really. There's a couple of things that I'll go through and explain. If you have one of these or you pick one of these up and it hasn't been serviced for a little while, it might pay to just check or get the capacitors checked. I'll show you, no, I've done a video on that just recently. I'll leave a link up here in the link up here and one in the description down below. It's always good to check the capacitors in these. Tell you what I'll do is I'll quickly go through the process, and if you want to jump ahead, if you've seen the other video, feel free to jump ahead. I'll leave chapters in down the bottom on the timeline, you'll see them there. You can just jump ahead to the next chapter. This doesn't take overly long to do. Just that hand wheel screw there. These can be a little bit tight, but not too bad there. One screw here. I'll just take that thread off top there. Now I just need to tip the machine over to get to these screws under here. Yeah, not lightweight machines. You'll quite often find that these screws, some of them may be missing. In fact, there's two missing from this one. There should be also a screw there and another one down there. And I'll show you why they come out. Okay, that should be about ready to take these two covers here off. That one should just pull straight off there. That exposes the belts here, and yep, these belts are getting harder to get. I managed to pick up one of the motor belts, or it might have been this one here, the other day, but yeah, getting few and far between. That I've seen that belt break, and I've seen these ones wear out as well. So yeah, just getting a bit harder. Bernina no longer officially supply them as far as I know. Brand new anyway, unless they've got you know, spare or new old stock, or some old stock lying around. Maybe they've pulled machines apart and salvaged the belts out of them, I don't know, but the official Bernina line is that they're no longer available, which is a shame, because you know, we can't keep these machines going forever if that's the case, unless someone reproduces them. Here we go. Okay, the capacitors look fine. There's one here, I think, that goes, and they're normally a reefer brand. But these, I think, have been, yeah, this one under here has been changed. It's not a reefer branded one. So that's looking good. No problems there whatsoever. You can identify the reefer ones just by looking at them. Right, oh well, that looks pretty good to me. I think we'll just put this cover back on. What can happen with these here is this plastic here breaks down, and the little nut that's retained in there disappears, and then, you know, when you go to screw it in from underneath, there's no nut for the screw to go into, and that's why sometimes you'll see some missing there. But that one's actually intact, so that's really just a matter of finding another screw to go in there. I think the reason for them breaking down is the fact that they're plastic. You know, it doesn't help, but I think they get over tightened, which is not helpful. So we'll put that back on there, put that back on there. Pretty easy to get into, it's not too much of a hassle. Basically we'll just screw it back together. Let's just quickly put that on. I'll leave the screws out at the bottom in the meantime. I'm just being lazy, just trying to make this process a little bit quicker here. I'll put them in later. These hand wheels can crack too. I've seen these, the plastic hand wheels crack. Yeah, it's a bit of a shame when they sort of started using plastics, isn't it? You know, I mean, a hand wheel would be quite nice if that was metal. You know, plastic covers, I guess it's just the way things went, isn't it? There's quite a lot of metal in this machine. That's all metal. This chassis here as such, the base plate, that's all metal. All this here is metal. Pretty easy to get into and service. It's really just a matter of, there's a little, you can just flip the front door open there, and there's a little latch under in the left here. Just push that to the left there, and you can lift out that there. This machine's looking really clean. I wonder whether I've actually done a little bit of work on this machine at some stage, because that capacitor is definitely one of the ones that looks like the ones I have in stock, and it's just looking really tidy. As far as mechanically goes, there's not any lint whatsoever in there, and just that test piece of material there, sort of a giveaway that I might have done some work on this machine. So I suspect we're probably going to be okay to run the machine. I think it's going to test okay, but let's do that anyway. That, I think, that foot, where's that one? Oh, that's tight. Why is that so tight? Oh, it jammed on. Oh, pretty hard to get off. There's a little bit of oil on my finger here. I'm just going to get a little bit of oil on that little, the bottom of the presser bar there where it mates up with this here. Had a bit of trouble getting that off. It might have been bound up a little bit there. So just give that a quick little bit of oil there. And let's plug it in and try it out. All the cabling and everything looks fine. Pays to check the cable on a machine that you've not used for a long time or had picked up second-hand. Pays just to check it, you know, before you go plugging it in. Just have a visual check and a field test there, just to make sure there's no nicks in the insulation there, exposed wiring, etc. The same goes for the foot controller. Just check your lead, make sure there's no deterioration of that lead there. Plug that in. We've got our on-off switch here. Power's on. Now this is in the off position. 1/4 turn clockwise there brings us to the on position, full speed, and half turn brings us to half speed there. Let's go full speed there. And let's see if everything's in order. We don't have any light there. Okay, that's looking good there. Just as a matter of course, I'll put a little bit of oil on the hook race there, just one drop down here. Now that clicking noise, that's common on these. I think they probably even did that since new. That's the needle positioning system kicking in there. You'll notice that the needle is always stopping in the up position there. We're on zigzag. I'll just go back to straight stitch there, come down. You'll notice that there are no lights here. There should be a light depending on what mode is selected here, and there are also 2 lights down here. Now that is apparently a little transformer in the back of on the power supply that we looked at before, and that's why these LEDs aren't lighting. It's no big deal, they're just indicator lights. It's not really a huge deal. And you'll see, if I get you in closer here, you'll see that the machine stops in the needle up position. Always. And you'll also notice that it's very responsive. So I'm just putting my foot flat to the floor and letting it off again, and it's starting and stopping very quickly. And that's what I really like about these machines. They are just so nice to use. So probably my all-time favorite Bernina, this model. I just really love that needle positioning system. It's sort of electromechanical. I don't know, there's something I really like about it. It's very responsive. Very nice machine to use. So yeah, I'll probably rave on about this thing through this video. So yeah, looks like someone's put labels on here, doesn't it? Buttonhole, stitch length labels, drop feed, stitch width, tension, you know. People do like to label their machines. To do something about the light, this one. Okay, let's do a straight stitch here. Just do a few stitches manually to make sure everything's in order. Okay, yep, tension's looking pretty good there. I'll put the machine onto zigzag there. Let's see what our tension looks like. It's looking pretty good. Could be a little bit tighter on top. I'll just increase that tension there slightly. Yeah, Maybe the bobbin tension may need just slackening off slightly. Yep, okay, but in general, you know, it's working fine. The other thing you do have to look at with these machines here is the fact that this lever here can become seized up. That one's getting quite tight. The more I use it, the freer it's getting there. So that needs oiling down inside. It's pretty easy to get the top cover off these machines. I'll show you how this works here. So at the moment we're selected on 0. That's straight and zigzag stitches. Just ignore these stitches here in the meantime. And you'll also see that we're on 0 here, okay? These two levers are on 0. And if we want to get to the pattern stitches, you'll see that they're labelled 1 to 20 there. I'll bring this one up to 1, and then you have to switch this up to stitches 1 to 20 there, like that. And you can see there we're set to a 3-step zigzag type stitch there. Okay, that's our 3-step zigzag there. The other thing to check here also is this function here. This is your basting stitch function. That can quite often become a little bit gummed up and sort of seized and doesn't function properly. And what you'll find possibly is that you'll enable one of these here. So we'll go to the shorter of the basting stitches here. So the way this works is the needle bar gets unlatched by a mechanism inside here, and it can get a bit gummed up, and what it can do is it can remain unlatched. So when you switch this on to a basting stitch here, the latch will release the needle bar, but it may not re-engage it, and that what will happen is the needle bar will just stop moving up and down. That can happen, or it may not even unlatch in the first place. So it's really just a matter of getting and lubricating that mechanism. Let's have a look and see. Just switching back to straight stitch here and see whether the basting stitch works. See, it's not unlatching the basting stitch, and it's starting to now. Right. And it sounds noisy. Doesn't sound right. Too clacky. So this needs a bit of attention there. And the really long basting stitch, it disengages the needle bar for a longer period of time. Yeah, something to do with the little engaging mechanism in here that I'll need to have a closer look at. Generally that machine is working to a point. There's a couple of wee things I need to sort out. I'll put that aside. I'll take a note of the things that need doing to each machine, and we'll put this one aside and get number 2 machine in. So that's number 1. Now this is machine number 2, and here is a prime example of a reefer capacitor. This is what a reefer capacitor looks like. It's this one here, the 0.1 microfarad X-class capacitor. That one looks in pretty good condition. But at some stage, I'd say in the very near future, that will fail. And the other one, that's sometimes a reefer branded capacitor, I think is this one here. That looks fine. Not a reefer capacitor. So just the reefer brand, they have that look. You can see a very slight amount of cracking going on there, and moisture makes its way into it, and moisture and electricity are not a very good mix, and they eventually will just leak and possibly explode. So I will go ahead and remove that. Not right now. I think it's good enough to test this machine for this video. If it blows up, it blows up. So yeah, I think just for this test here, that should be fine. That's the little transformer, as far as I know. That's the one that drives the lights, the little LED lights, the red and the greens on the front panel and the top, and that's the one I think that fails. But as I say, not necessary for the running of the machine. So I'll just quickly button this one back up here, and we'll do a wee test on this machine here. Okay, plugged in there, light works on this one. Pretty handy. I'll just remove the bobbin case here while I do this little test here. Make sure everything's running. Yeah, so this is the problem with the basting. This little basting mechanism. Although it's set to stitching, it's not latching. You see the needle bars not driving there. Not sure I can get it to latch back in there. So that definitely needs attention. Okay, so there's a problem. Yeah, LEDs are working. There's one there. And I've got LED on the top here working. If I switch across to stretch stitches, by switching this switch down here, you'll see our LED indicates it's now set to stretch stitches there. Okay, and yeah, it indicates it down here as well, like that. We need to get in and have a close look at what's going on with this. Generally it's just it's a little bit gummed up in here, so I'll take the faceplate off here and see if we can get in for a closer look there. Now, getting this lid off is pretty easy. I've gone through this plenty of times. Just a quarter of a turn either way on these screws here. Flathead screwdriver. And that should just lift straight off there. And we do have a couple of other things that you probably would want to check if you're looking at buying one of these. There's a plastic gear down in here. This one drives the vertical shaft. That could fail. If that fails, it's a pretty big job, I think, to replace that. Yeah, I don't know if that one's available, that gear still. I'm pretty sure that this gear here, this plastic one here, if that fails, I think that's still available. Not officially from Bernina, but certainly third-party replacements for that gear I would check also. So you want to turn the machine over so that that gear goes full circle, so you can inspect that gear. There's actually a little bit of rust here, a little bit of rusting here, so it needs a bit of clean up there. It's been sitting a bit damp, I would say. Yeah, that won't be helping things. Some models have faceplate screws, 2 screws here to get this faceplate off. This one doesn't. It has a latch type system. Now it's just a matter of poking a screwdriver in there and pushing in a little latch in there, and that faceplate should come off like that. Little latch inside here to just release it off these pins here. What that does is it gives us access, reasonably clear access to this area here, which is the little latch system. Now, I would say that, yeah, this little latch here, it's pretty hard to see. If I swing this spring off here, if I just hook that spring off there, we might be able to see this a bit better. Now, it's all to do with this little latch here. Overexposing a little bit here so that you can see this. Take that spring off. That's this latch here. That one there that seizes up, and it is quite seized there. That should sort of spring back nice and freely, and I normally find if I can get some penetrating oil onto there, it frees it. Just a little spray, you don't need too much, and then we'll follow that up with a little bit of oil once we're freed there, and just work away at that. I can feel it's coming free already. You can see it's springing back there now, or starting to. Still a little bit gummy, feels a bit gummy. Yeah, I definitely think this machine's been damp. Yeah, starting to free there now, nicely. And then I think maybe even just exercising it with the machine running might do the trick, but we can see how it works here. If I put the spring back on, just like that, put that into there. Needle bar's latched there. I'll just plug the machine in. Are we latched? We're on sewing mode. Oh, the machine's disengaged because the lid's off. Just a sec, I'll put the lid on. Rightio, let's see if we've got drive here. Yep, and we do. You can see the needle bar down here, moving up and down. Oh, reasonably smooth machine. Nice, I haven't even serviced this one. So, yep, I will go ahead and service it. But if I just manually, just show you how this works, if I manually push this little lever out, you'll see there that there raised up, and now the needle bar will be disengaged. So you've got the driving mechanism here, heading up and down. I'm just turning the machine back and forward there. You can see it heading up and down there. If I carry on in operating direction, it'll come back up and it should latch back in and pick up the needle bar, which it has. So just that little bit of lubricant there, a little bit of penetrating oil to start with, has helped there. Okay. And if we have a look around the front here, we're on sewing mode, right? This one here. If I switch that across to basting, it's a shortish basting stitch. Okay, and that's the basting stitch working there. You can see the needle bar down here engaging, and it's engaging every other stitch, right? Just here. So 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Okay, every other stitch. If I switch the little lever on the front of the machine to the longer basting stitch, you'll see it'll do a lot more non-stitches as such than stitches. 1, 1, every, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, every 6 stitches. And you'll also notice that the feed dogs are still working, so it's effectively feeding the fabric 6 stitches without doing a stitch, and then doing 1 tacking stitch. It's like a basting stitch. And if I set it back to straight stitch, normal stitch, you'll see it as engaged. So that's it, fixed. And as I say, I would follow up with oil on top of that. Just get some sewing machine oil, sorry, bumping the camera there. Sewing machine oil into there, give it a bit of a soaking there. Some of that might come down and out of the machine, but you know, don't put too much on there. So that's that problem fixed. Let's have a look at how this mechanism works for the basting feature. We'll just take the lid off here. Yeah, if we try and run the machine without the lid on, it doesn't drive the main shaft there. I'm going to have to hold this here, this little latch up manually to get the machine to drive. And let's see if we can get a close look at how this mechanism works here. So effectively we're on straight stitch at the moment, so you can see that the needle bar down here is being driven. If I turn it to the shortest of the basting stitches, you'll see that this here moves forward slightly and this here moves. I'll just switch it back and forward there. Okay, and now we should have so we're not engaging any longer. It is the day after and it's very cold in this room. So I suspect that that little mechanism has sort of frozen up again. It probably just needs a little bit more lubrication. I'll get a little bit more penetrating oil onto that little mechanism. I've set the exposure up a little bit here because it's quite dark back in here. This is the mechanism that we're looking at here, and what it does is it pops out towards us when the needle bar is to be disengaged, and it causes this little lever here that I showed you earlier, which is now behind the spring, but you can see it moving there, little black lever. It pushes that away from the operator, so to our left as such, and that will disengage the needle bar. So you can see the needle bar is disengaged there at the moment. If I let that go, it should latch back in. Yep, just there, latched back in there now. It does need a little bit of freeing up. It's definitely not quite free enough there, but as I run the machine, you'll see, just keep an eye on this here, this is the bit that comes in and out here. You see, so effectively what it's supposed to be doing is every time it comes towards us, it should be disengaging the needle bar. Now the needle bar is permanently disengaged at the moment, so definitely need to work on this lever here. You can see it better down here. I'll just exercise that to try and work some of that lubricant through there. It's probably going to improve as the room warms up. You should never really run your machines, in a cold room. It does say often in the manuals that you should warm your room up to, probably, I think the minimum is probably about 18 degrees. Okay, let's see how we're going there. Yep, okay, so it's working now. You can see just down here, you can see the needle bar. Just come back a fraction. Yeah. And you can see that every time the needle bar is disengaged, this here has come towards us. It just unlatches that, okay? So that's the short basting stitch. If I switch it over to the long basting stitch, where we get a stitch every 6 cycles, I think it's about 6, you'll see it. 1. So you'll notice that this little mechanism's towards us for quite some time, and that's because the needle bar is disengaged for quite some time and then just pops back to do 1 stitch. It's pretty hard to see, sorry, the needle bar down here. You can see it engaging. And if I switch it back to standard sewing, you'll notice that this just moves back permanently. Okay, so switch it back, and there we go, we're on standard sewing there. So that gives you a bit of an idea of how this mechanism works. Now if I switch this to basting, you can also see that this here changes. Yeah, see, standard sewing, that just remains stationary, this little lever here, and it's dipped down into the machine more. If I bring it into basting, you'll see it flips up every stitch, or every second stitch I would say that is. And if we go to the long basting stitch, yeah, you see it pops down when it does a stitch. So it must really just be to sort of clamp the thread, I think, while it's not being sewn as such. Yeah, it's been driven by these cams here. So this is the long, this cam to the rear here. That's your long basting stitch cam, and the one towards the operator is the shorter one. That's what's causing that little round black piece to pop out in and out that we saw before. So that's driven by this here. Yeah, I just thought I'd show you how that worked. It's quite interesting, that feature. It's very handy, very good for temporary stitching. Yeah, I think this machine's probably about ready to test. I think it's good enough at least just to do some testing there. So let's put the lid back on, and I'll come back when I've got it all ready to go. Okay, let's see how we go sewing here. The foot's got a little bit of rust on it, a bit of rust here. I've got some rust remover which I'll apply. See whether I can tidy that up. This machine needs a good clean up. We'll start with a zigzag stitch here. It seems to run nicely there. Tension's probably a bit tight there. I'll just drop that down a little bit. Reverse is sticking on. I need to lubricate that. As I say, I'll be giving this machine a full service. Yep, tension's better. I think the bobbin tension's actually a little bit too loose there. I will just, yeah, a little bit too loose. I'll just tighten that up. Quarter of a turn. It's probably all it needs. Yep, that's feeling better there. Find the zigzag is quite a good stitch to balance your tensions. Yeah, still, what's that top thread doing? Yeah, top's quite tight. Just going to loosen the tension off a little bit more. Yeah, it's looking better. Might have gone a little bit too far there. Could probably tighten that up a little bit on the top, but it's coming right there now. Okay, it seems to be sewing nicely. Yep. Tension needs a little bit more work. It's not too bad just for this quick test here. I'll show you one of the stretch stitches. So I'll switch across to stretch. So effectively I'm just switching. So that was a stitch we did just then, number 9. We've come down to this stitch here. It's sort of a blanket stitch, I guess you could call it, number 2. And then I have to switch down here, that one there, over to the stretch stitches. And yeah, of course the lights aren't working on this one. Were they before? I can't quite remember now. Were they working? Was it that one there, this machine here, that the lights weren't working? I thought one of them was. Anyway, I'll show you this stitch here. Okay, this is the blanket stitch here. I'll just increase that stitch length there. Nice stretch stitch there, nice blanket stitch. Yeah, so that appears to be working to a point. There are a few things I need to do to this one. Machine number 2 here. Definitely need to service it and try and get rid of some of this sort of surface rust. And yeah, give it a bit of TLC, maybe tune the tensions up a little bit more. And I think that'll be a good running machine once that's done. So let's put this one aside. We'll get machine number 3 onto the bench here now. Right, machine number 3. I've checked the capacitors. They are fine in this one. The bulb isn't working. To check that out. These lights, the little LEDs here, are working though. Let's switch that across. Yep, got red here and we've got red up here as well. hard to see, red there. If I switch across, green. Okay, so those lights are working there. Let's just do a quick test to make sure that the machine's running there. Okay, press foot's up. Let's see. Yep, looking good. Okay. Okay. We have a capacitor reefer. Look, it's already started to go. Starting to spew its guts. So I was pretty lucky not to have an exploding capacitor there. Starting to go. It was a little bit risky running it without checking it first. I thought I'd show you this because this is a different variant to the machine that I showed replacing the capacitor on the other 930 I did just recently. And yeah, the board's different. This little transformer on the other model I showed was mounted on this board. And yeah, it's just, and there's an extra screw. There's another screw just here. Yeah, slightly different layout. I just thought I'd show you that. I've replaced the capacitor there. Here's the other one. Pretty crusty, blowing apart there. Bit stinky. Yeah, so that one goes off to the bin, and I can put this one back together. This little lever here, if you're not careful when you're putting this back together, can not locate into that hole there. If you're not careful, it's, you know, you need to put that black lever into that hole there on the back of this board. So when you install it, you do have to make sure that you, as you're putting the board in here, you do have to make sure that you lift this little lever up so that it goes into that little slot there. And I can see it here. You probably can't. It's a bit hard to see. But just back in there, just make sure that it's located in there. So I'll go ahead and put this back together. Just overexposing here a little bit so you can see these black parts. If I have a sewing here, and when I stop, you'll see this flick. See that? And you'll also see this here is engaging the little micro switch there. Okay, we're all threaded up and ready to go here. Got the machine set on zigzag. Just make sure everything's in order there. Yep, that's sounding pretty good there. Yep, tension was a bit loose on the top. I'll just tighten that up a little bit. They are a little bit noisy, a bit clacky, clunky, these machines, when the needle positioning and the needle stopper is coming in. But very nice to use. Okay, let's try one of the pattern stitches. I'll just go for the 3-step zigzag there. Yep. Working nicely there. And let's try one of the stretch. And let's try one of the stretch stitches there. Switch across to stretch stitch. And guess what? The LED's no longer working. So yeah, is that a common failure? Anyway, it's pretty easy to tell you're on stretch stitch. I mean, the lever's over this side, standard stitches over there. Let's go. Sewing nicely, sounding quite good. I'll leave it at that for this video. It's been quite a long video, but basically I'm just going to go through all 3 machines, service them, clean them up. I've got a little list here. So the machine number 1, that's this one over the back here, the basting stitch is not engaging. I think as we saw on this one, that's reasonably easy to sort out. tension, I'll go through all of them and set the tensions, things like that. The bulb is blown in that one, or maybe the bulb's not even in it, not sure for that one. Machine number 2, this one here, a little bit rusty. I'll try and sort that out, and the bobbin winder, it was hard to engage on this one for some reason, so I'll sort that out as well. This one here, machine number 3, the bulb's missing, I'll put a bulb in it. This thread guide here is a little bit tight, it's pushed in towards the machine, that just needs a little bit of adjustment. Yeah, that's about it really. I'll just go through and tidy them up, as I say. I hope you found that interesting. Thank you very much as always to my patrons on Patreon, and thank you very much for watching.